Welcome back, parents. Jordan Langdon here for another episode of the Families of Character show. One thing that I fail to talk about on our show is the fact that we are a nonprofit organization. The passion I have for coaching parents and for family life is just like exploding from me. But in the process, I kind of forget some of these details. And we got to keep the lights on, we got to keep the podcast going. So I just wanted to stop for a minute and just say, number one, thank you to all the donors who have supported us over the last 14 years to create amazing products, to hire great help, and also to start new initiatives like we've recently started, which is a coaching program for parents where we really feel like true transformation in families will happen. And so if our podcast has blessed you in any way, or our emails and free resources, our products, if you would consider a donation of some sort, we would be so grateful. We've made it really easy to donate on a monthly basis, $20, $50 a month, or even a one-time gift. And you can just go to our website at familiesofcharacter.com, hit the donate button, and sign up there. Now I want to get into what I really love talking about, and that is family life, how to do business and family life and meld them together well. And so our guest on today's show, Jeff Schiefelbein, definitely knows a little something about that. So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Jordan, thank you. And I've been a huge fan of Families of Character for a very long time. So what a cool intersection in my life to be on the podcast with you.
So awesome. We were introduced by a mutual friend and, probably a month ago. And I've just been kind of poring over LinkedIn, watching your videos. You're everywhere. You're everywhere, nationwide, like worldwide. Like you're speaking out there. You're motivational. I mean, you're such a light. Really, when I watch your videos or hear you speak, there's just so much passion and positivity and optimism that exudes from you. So I was like, man, if there's any way we can get this guy on the show, I'm just going to ask. So thanks for being here.
Coolest little intro. Thank you. I am humbled by it, but also fueled by it, because I do think that especially as parents and as working parents, or even if I'm just talking to the men for a second, we fall victim to this place of life is so hard and being married is so hard. And then we start to complain about our kids and our wife and our job. And next thing you know, even things we didn't believe, we say them so much, they root into us. And now everything is a burden and a chore. And I think that you wake up one day and you're retired and you say, what did I just do? What was that for if I was so miserable and overloaded and carrying this huge weight? And it turns out the weight's not even there. It's this thing you made up and you put it on your own back, and it doesn't need to be there.
You are so right. And that doesn't just happen to men. I'm raising my hand saying I've been in the pits like that before, where all of a sudden I'm venting to my girlfriends about the frustrations I have with my husband. And then I'm going, I'm a therapist. I know this doesn't end well, because what happens when I do that is my friend gives me enough support that I never go back to my husband and really have a authentic, good conversation with him that might initiate some change and bring us closer together. And then it's this vicious cycle. So I appreciate you speaking to that right off the bat, that life doesn't have to be that way if you're stuck in that pattern, that language. And just, life's a drag, parenting's a drag, marriage is a drag.
Mm-hmm.
It can be totally different.
And you can break free. There's just simple tools. It's almost like word tools you can use to break free from that, because the pattern you're in is never going to stop if you just walk up to the same group of people and you engage in the same conversation. And you have to have this awkward moment. I guarantee it's awkward to take somebody that you've always gossiped with and somebody that you've always commiserated with about marriage and kids and jobs and bosses and try to change that conversation. So sometimes it's easier to start with a complete stranger. If somebody wants to complain, oh, you got a lot of kids, that must be, it must be nice to be on a business trip. Well, the tool I would give you is say, make no mistake about it, being with my kids is one of the greatest joys of my life, but being on this business trip is a necessity for everything that we're trying to build and do in our business. So now all of a sudden I refuse to go into that path. I refuse to speak badly about my wife and kids. If I can do that with the stranger or the acquaintance, then I can work my way backwards to, let's say you and I were coworkers and we commiserated all the time about blah, blah, blah kids, and it's so exhausting. And then one day I say, you know what, Jordan, I've actually been working on some changes and it starts with my language. So I actually can't do this anymore. I need to take a step back. Here's some things that I think would maybe be more fruitful for me to talk about. And you'd be like, what got into Jeff? That's weird. But if I said it to you the second time and the third time, most of the people that you know in your life, they're actually desperate to have a real conversation too. They actually are sick of talking bad and carrying that weight with them. And then there's some people that just aren't ready to make that change. That's okay, but don't engage in it with them. Don't commiserate with them. Start to make that change. And if I may, because I blab a lot and I have a lot to say, it is wild the way your words change everything. And the example I'll give you, I used to justify in business that it was okay for me to have locker room talk because that was my industry. I was in energy, I was in sales, I was in whatever. And one day I get struck by just God speaking through this man during my coaching session. He worked for somebody who worked for me. I mean, it's like lower on the level of, if you want to talk about hierarchy. And he pours into me at the end and says, the one secret that would lead to breakthrough performance is your passion is amazing and it's ruined by any locker room talk. And from that moment on, I decided to remove all bad language from my life. And that was a very difficult, like day in, day out process. Well, eventually I started saying goofy words, like I sounded like Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. Then that turned into, I wasn't even thinking those words. Like if something bad happened, I'd say, oh, geez, or golly, or oh, goodness, the good words. And then I even stopped being mad at people in bad words. I would get cut off and I'd be like, come on, man, look where you're going. Like no bad words would come blurting out of my mouth. And so I had to return to innocence that even if I were to listen to an audiobook that has a lot of cuss words in it now, it revolts inside of me. Like there's this disgust or this discord in me. I can handle it very small amounts, but too much of it, and I just turn off the TV. I won't even listen to a podcast that has it. And so my brain became more innocent in the way I look at people, in the way I get mad at people, in the way that I talk about a beautiful woman, even in my old head, my college head that was just an idiot kid. It has been reshaped by my language first. So your words are powerful.
Words are powerful. You got it. Language is the first thing that ignites our behavior, right? I mean, the words you choose make so much difference. And I appreciate your practical advice on just how to engage someone at the water cooler that you have been, in that relationship with for years maybe, and just saying, this is about me. I'm choosing to do something different, and I hope you'll respect that. And just leading by example, right?
People need a
Everybody's on their
catalyst
own
too.
journey.
Sorry, I'm so pumped up talking to you. People need a catalyst for change. That's why when you move or you get a new job, like there's always a new baby, like things can change in your life, and that's the catalyst for change. If somebody watches this podcast, they can literally say at the water cooler, I watched or listened to a podcast yesterday. This is what I'm doing different because of it. And the proclamation of that is all you need to have this new permission for a different type of relationship or conversation. So that's what I tell people when I'm coaching them. Say, my coach said, and then fill in the blank on what you're going to do differently, because now you have the catalyst so you don't just look like a person who woke up with a different view all of a sudden. You're going through a process, and other people usually respect that you're on a journey.
Yes. I love that. The idea of being a catalyst for change, right? That we don't have to be fearful when we're doing the right thing. We can do it with courage and confidence and in a loving way. We're not judging you for your language. We're just saying, hey, this is something that I've learned, I've been enlightened with, and I'm going to try it for myself. And in the process, I think you make a good point that there's some people that might leave us. They're not there yet, and that's okay. There's a natural editing process that happens in friendships and relationships, and we shouldn't have guilt about that. We do need to have mastery over ourselves first, and that needs to be our priority. Our priority with our spouse, our priority with our kids is that we have our house in order first, right?
Yes. 100% agree with that. And the editing process, I like the way you said that. I've never used that before. There's also this part that says, we don't know what's going on inside of the soul of another person, like what's on their heart, what wounds are they dealing with, what trauma, what triggers, what recent things in their life and their health and their whatever. And so at some point I just have to be empathetic and say, it's okay that you're not here, or that you don't want to go down this part of this journey with me, or even if you're mad at me for it, you're probably, none of those things have anything to do with me. It's usually just whatever process you're going through and where you're at in that. And so I can even take away the offense that I feel if somebody is turned off by the new me or the thing I'm trying. I can turn off that offense from a place of just, I hope that everything continues to progress positively for that person.
Absolutely. And when your goals are pointed in the right direction like that, there's no guilt, right? It's, hey, this is going to make me a more virtuous person, and that's what I'm going for.
Yeah. Yes. I have so much to say. I'm so excited about this. Like virtue, and I know this is family as a character. When you're working in virtue, when you're living and thinking and communicating and relating in virtue, you know what that feels like. It feels like joy and generosity and self-control, modesty, all these things that the fruits of that. And none of those are anxiety, malice, envy, anger, frustration, like all that murky, irky stuff that you're carrying around couldn't possibly be coming from virtue. It can only be coming from the other 1,000 options you have that are not virtuous. So
Exactly.
you can kind of do the litmus test. How do I feel right now? Okay, I'm in something before this moment is out of whack with how I'm called to live versus how I'm living, and how I'm called to model for my wife and kids and community versus what I'm doing.
Yes, I think that's what we have been after for 14 years with this organization, is saying, when you have an issue in your life, if you're very anxious about something, look at the opposite, right? That's anxiety is a vice. And so look at the opposite of that. Do I need to be more organized? Could I do a better job at saying no to things and temptations and social gatherings, or whatever might be taking away from the priorities in my life? Is that what I'm doing right now? Is that where this anxiety is coming from? That I need to seek the good versus trying to, ward out the bad.
Mm-hmm. I can remember talking with Steve Merkel when he was first kind of going, this is about a decade ago, we would sit down together and I'd take his words from my very first lunch talking about family as a character, and even used them yesterday coaching a client who's having some issues at home with a teenage child. I don't have any teenagers, so I can't put myself perfectly in his shoes. But what this teenager is doing is kind of messing with the family dynamic. Like it's hurting husband and wife and their energy, and it's trickling over into work. And I went back to this, like, don't let your child rule the house, the day, the vibe, the energy. Take it back by living virtuously in love with your priorities. And by doing that, you're going to model a behavior that this kid is either going to get on board with or not, or it's going to be chipping away at some foundation or shell that this kid has built or not. And that's not what you're called to do. You're not called to answer it for the kid. You're called to live for all the priorities that you believe in, and to connect into that modeled relationship with your spouse if you're in a good place for that, so that you own your pathway of virtue and joy, not getting hijacked. You can still be sad. It can still be challenging or exhausting or whatever the thing is, but that shouldn't take away from joy, and that shouldn't take away from the progress.
Yes. Yes. I love the words of Steve Markle. I use them frequently with people on a daily basis, but he's been there, right? He has a grown children, 5 children, and lots of grandchildren, and he's used this method before. He said, our family didn't change until my wife and I started really consciously working together as a team, as a unified team, to grow in virtue, or to improve our character, if you want to say it in a different way. But they used to just take like one character strength, one virtue per month, and say, you know what, we're going to work really hard at prioritizing our time together and getting back to that, being on time and prioritizing relationships. We're going to do that for 30 days. And he said, man, like 6 months later, his kids are like what did you and mom do? Like, are you on something? Did you have you gone to some great magician? Like, what has happened in your relationship? You're so much more in love. And he said, yeah, because we have a common goal that we're working towards, you know? So I did want to dive into that with you. Like, you're married, you and Amanda you live in Texas, you have 7 kids. Like, how do you work as a family on a common goal? There's a whole brood of you and I love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and thank you for saying 7 kids. Number 7 is going to be born to us in January, but that is my 7th child. So the way that you even said that matters to me. The thing that's really interesting to me about me and Amanda is on our very, very first date. First of all, to go on our first date, I told her, I think we're supposed to get married, so we should probably go on a date. That was my, I had known her for 6 months at this time. That was my, like, can we go on a date? And she said yes. On our first date, I talked about my desire for a big family, for the cacophony of meaningful chaos. And she talked about her desire for having a loud house and a future of old age with a backyard so full of grandkids that they're hard to count. And so we set ourselves on a path. This is how crazy it got. I said, have you ever watched Gilmore Girls? This is first date. And she said, no. And I said, well, I'd really love for a daughter of ours to be named Lorelai. Lorelai will turn 10 in November of this year. So she's our first. We named her. And we set ourselves on this path of saying, here's where we both feel called. It was very much that the Holy Spirit kind of brought us together. We had this, like, I can't explain it other than love that was beyond just the two of us enjoying a date. And what we kept saying was, what would the future look like if all those things we just said came true? What would it look like if our house was a center of gravity? What would it look like if we couldn't have children, if we needed to adopt? What would it look like if we had money that we could invest in some part of the house or the car or the fill in the blank trip? Like, what would we do? And so we started working our way backwards. Well, here was all the priorities of our house. Faith, spouse, kids, everything else in that order. So, okay, what do you do with that? And what we ended up building was a center of gravity where she became prolific and amazing at cooking. We built, if I'm talking about where we spent our money and energy, it was to build a bigger kitchen table and nook so that we can have family dinners. It was to redo the backyard so it was safe and fun, to create a seating area in the front yard so we can be neighborly and neighbors as our kids are just on their little scooters. It was like, how do we make this place special? And I know I'm jumping around here, but it's like, we haven't ever known anything other than to be aligned with one another, casting a vision of what do we feel called to create together? And if that could be true, how do we work our way backwards? It's our schedule. It's our where we put our money from a donation standpoint, how we spend time with our kids, how we still have date nights on a very regular basis. I just got done texting her that Thursday night's a date night. And I think being so intentional in our lives, I think you can tell I'm intentional with my words, I'm intentional with my time. The result is that we get to be the junior version of Steve, that we're growing more in love every single day, that we're modeling a behavior that is far more important than whatever we tell our kids and tell our friends and coworkers to do. It's what we're living that causes people to say, I want to be a better dad. I want to understand how to have a better relationship. I would like to have a better relationship with my own parents. And I don't even have teenage kids, and I get calls from people asking me how to help them through the 16 to 22-year-old phase for their children just because of all the content and all the speaking that I do. And so I think it's just a blessing to be able to give that to other people.
I want to underscore something you said, and that is something that you established right off the bat with Amanda, and that is the priorities in your home, that you continue to go back to. I think, if you've been living that way for a long time, it may feel natural to you to consider your faith first, your spouse second, and then your children third, and then career and environment and all that, health below that. But not everybody thinks about that, right? It's like they naturally get married, they're in love, they start having children, and there's no real intentional conversation about how we have to make sure that we're always in line with these priorities and that we do that by scheduling dates, right? Where we get care for the kids or we date each other at home on the back porch, when our kids go to bed once a week, if that's what we have to do. But making sure that your behaviors, your choices, your financial decisions are in line with that order of priorities. And one thing that I have noticed is that, you said, Jeff, more than anything, what we model, taking care of each other as husband and wife, and, being on time ourselves, and being organized and intentional about our language, like that is going to matter more than what we tell our kids. Well, here's what I hear from people. I've been a therapist for 20 years, and when I talk to parents about, modeling, being healthy models for their kids, there is this terror that rushes over them. And there's this need to confess, like, but Jordan, I don't even do that. I hit the snooze button on my alarm clock. How can I expect them to get up on their own? I don't make my bed. How can I ask them to make their bed? And that's where I'm saying you don't have to be terrified by this. Like, it unify with them, right? Bring yourself from this level of, oh, I'm hiding. You think I'm so good, but I'm really falling apart and I'm really broken, to, you know what? We all can grow in these character strengths together. We can all work on this as a unified team. And it sounds like you've got a pretty awesome team mentality going on at the Schiefelbein
We
house.
do, and we're full of flaws. I mean, I joke all the time. I'll yell at the kids to stop yelling. It's like, does that make any sense? The weird things that come out of your mouth as a parent. But I got to tell you how neat it is that if one of my kids is being disrespectful, and then I discipline, and then I go past discipline and I go from training to shaming, and I've taken it too far, that I'll come back and sit down with that kid and I'll say, hey, Dad messed up. What I started to do was appropriate. When I didn't let up on it, or when I raised my voice more, I moved into a role that was inappropriate. And I want to ask you for your forgiveness, because your daddy's still learning how to be the dad of this many kids, or of a 9-year-old, or of a 5-year-old, 6-year-old boy, or whatever. And what I get back from them is they become part of that team, because they acknowledge, they forgive, they hold accountable. I mean, I can tell you, one time I was yelling. I got 2 girls, then 3 little boys, then a girl, and then another kid on the way. We'll see. And I can remember yelling at the 3 little boys. Are in this pack. They're 6'4", 2. And they're going crazy. And I'm like saying something. And the 8-year-old says, Dad, they're just little boys. Back off. And I looked at her and I squinted, and she goes, what? It's what you tell me every time I'm frustrated with them. They're just little boys. And I was like, your wisdom right now is exactly what Daddy needed. And she said, you know what else you need? You need a heart connecting hug. And she'll bring me in and put her heart up against my heart. And I don't care what's going on in the world. That's about the greatest moment to have that. So they do become your teammate. They do. And they know from our words and our actions that I put my relationship with my spouse above my relationship with my kids. And that's pretty critical to showing them the love that I want them to seek, should they, discern that they're going to be a married person in their adulthood.
Oh, so much that's good in that.
I love
Like,
parenting. I love studying parenting. Like, I think it's the coolest thing. And I don't know why more people, I guess I wish if I could throw a magic wand. I wish parents loved studying parenting. Families of Character, I tell people to check out. Dr. Meg Meeker, Dr. Ray Garundi. There's all these people that write these books that then I'll do the book study with my wife, and we'll go through like, okay, who are we in this equation? How could we be more aligned with what discipline really means? What love looks like in a time where you disagree with your child? What does time, how do each one of our kids respond to time and loving touch and words of affirmation? Like, how can we study our children as parents? And then it becomes the greatest joy. I'm never turning that off. And certainly I'm going to just throw this out there to challenge men. If you ever say you're babysitting your kids, you need to check yourself at the door. That's the craziest words to say. Like, it is a joy and a privilege that you get to be dad. So show up for that. I love this stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. I agree. We need to avoid some of the crazy distractions, the social scrolling and the TikTok, and we can get down these rabbit holes for what? For what? Really, our job is is to be the primary educators of our kids, right? And faith and morals, and we want them to be healthy, and we have to show up. If we're distracted and the world has us just hijacked, it's just not possible to do the things you're talking about, to be intentional, to have dates with your spouse on a weekly or a monthly basis, to do a book study with your spouse when you have six kids and one another on the way, like, and you're traveling and speaking and running businesses. Like, it really is possible when you drown out the noise, right? Kind of the, what do they call it? The trivial many, and focus on the vital few.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to say something about the business side of this because I think it trickles back into the home. For 25 years, I've been starting and running different businesses, for-profit, nonprofit, big, small, turnarounds, you name it. There's a lot of secrets to the success of these, but one of them is this concept of like truly giving agency to everybody around me. Like, I trust you to do the work, not to get it right. Getting it right or being successful is just a potential outcome. I just trust you to do it. I actually hope that in doing it, you have tons of failures, that we lose money, that you make a mistake and we lose a client, that the thing you wanted didn't come through because you're actually being formed, and that work was made to form you to be the best version of yourself, not to produce an output for a machine that makes money. Like, money is just a sign that we must be doing something right. And that idea of trusting others and giving them true agency and empowerment, and the idea of do something even if it's right, means a lot of times it's not going to be the outcome you expected, but it's what you learn from it. It's so neat because I think the same thing at home. I just want you to participate. If you're washing the windows and they look worse afterwards, thank you so much. What did you learn from that exercise? You know, I watch my wife, who I will say is an old soul. I'm 11 years older than my wife. She's an old soul introvert who would prefer to be a wallflower naturally. But now she runs the Parents Club for a school that's pre-K 3 through 12. If you want to talk about a diverse set of needs. And I watch her. And as she's on the phone, she has put vice presidents in every grade. She's delegated all these different tasks. And all she is kind of the quarterback that if somebody needs something, she can step in and be the person who removes an obstacle. And I looked at her, I was like, look at you. You're pregnant. You got 6 kids at home and you're running this really well. Where did this come from? She goes, I've been sitting next to you in the car for 14 years as you've been on phone calls. Don't think I'm not listening. Like, I've picked up on the fact that when you give people real responsibility, they're being formed, they're being dignified, they're being challenged. Well, how is that any different than our kids? Give them real responsibility. They're being formed, they're being challenged, they're being dignified. I'm not worried if it's better or worse than it was before. I'm worried about what are they learning in the process.
Oh, yes. Trusting others in your business. I've seen you do a lot of little reels and bits of, videos on LinkedIn about this, and calling your coworker, not your employee, or this person works for me, and trusting your employees implicitly, right? Saying like, you've got this. I know you've never done this before, but I trust that you will learn something in the process, and all of us will become better because of this journey that you're about to embark on. Like, just the confidence that you have in the people that you work with and the people you consult with. I think that's where all this energy and passion comes from. I mean, you're going to have people knocking down your door like, "Can I please work for you, Jeff? Please, please." But I'm just thinking, imagine what it's like to grow up in a home where this is how your parents are with you as a child. Imagine if every child could have a parent who is saying, who cares? You want to, my son cast a fishing line out in our backyard yesterday trying to catch a squirrel. Okay. He's 11. He loves to fish, but I could have shut him down and been like, okay, that's not going to work. Like a fishing hook, and a squirrel, and like the line, and the way you've got. No, I'm like, go for it, buddy. Whatever you want to do, try this out. So just empowering them, like you said, giving them, real responsibility, not putting limits on them, saying, well, you're not there yet, or you're not 12 yet. We don't do that until we're 12 at our house. It just allows them to flourish and just grow into the beautiful little humans they were created to be.
You know, I love this is this is pretty crazy to say on a family thing. I love when my kids get hurt, not when they get injured and, stitches actually don't bother me. I don't want someone to lose an arm, okay? Most things aren't going to cause that. Turns out most things are just a broken arm or stitches, right? So it's funny. I don't mean this as a knock against my dad. This is a little bit of just generational piece. But I can remember going on a hike with my dad and the nieces and nephews, and one of them was just on this little rock ledge and it was shaking and they were going to fall. And he's like, get down from there. And I said, let her walk. And he goes, she's going to fall. And I said, let her fall. And I realized how different his parenting and my parenting were in that moment, because as long as my kid's not going to kick a rock on me, which I don't want to get hurt. If my kid needs to learn that rock ledge is going to fall and they're going to fall over, great. I want them to have that experience because I want them to know their limits. I also want them to know when it doesn't fall over, what they're capable of. And so in that calibration of the whole thing, this is not a joke. I have been to the hospital for check-in overnight stays 7 times in 13 months. But if you took the ER visits on top of that, I bet I've been in the hospital 14 times for the ER. Stitches, ant bites, viruses, whatever. And people are like, how do you take your kid out in public? They might get sick. And I'm like, oh, my kids are getting sick. I guarantee it. There's a lot of them. But they're
sucking on the grocery cart handle,
right. But
baby.
Think about the resiliency of this one. When Ambrose was in the hospital recently. Okay, well, I have to cancel some things at work, and I have to juggle some things, and everybody has to make a few sacrifices. But I didn't lose my joy. I know where my joy comes from. I knew he was going to live, and even if I was facing a life and death situation, I know my higher purpose, and I'm called to be, while I'm here, this kid's dad and spouse to Amanda, and do my best to bless other people in business. And I'm going to jump around for one more second here. I started my last business. It was called Five. It was an energy consulting company. It grew to be one of the 3 or 4 largest in America out of a few thousand. And it's still growing today. I just left a year ago. But it's a really, really big, awesome company with an incredible culture. And I would say to people, my priorities are faith, wife, kids, rest of my family, and all else. And they're like, oh, but work is, and I said, no, work is somewhere in the all else. I like working, I like producing, but I said they could kick me off the island today and I could no longer be a part of this company, and I haven't lost any of my identity. My identity isn't rooted in this thing. Even though that company, I was the founder, co-founder, and the identity and brand of that company was synonymous with me for a decade, I kept saying, it doesn't define me in any way. I did that when I was in my 20s. Being defined by work and titles and how busy and how important I am is such a farce. It's a false narrative that people fall for. And to prove it, not to prove it, but as proof that that wasn't my identity, when I left in love. I left with contribution. I left with them having incredible momentum, with me completely passing off everything for about a 2-year period. And they've only grown since I left. And I love them. So I don't have to be connected to my work, my title. Like every time you say my anything, you're probably creating a false possession. It's like driving down the highway and get out of my lane. What do you mean my lane? It's just this piece of concrete that we're all on, right? Like, let's just go. And so that's, to me, work. Work, you should do your absolute best. You should do it in a dignified and excellent manner, but you shouldn't get it out of whack with where it belongs in the stack of what matters.
As you are saying that, what comes to my mind is that, you can get bogged down in your work and feel like, oh, the next move is just so important and critical, and I've got to get this right. And if not, fill in the blank. Yes. But when you have your priorities in order, like you talked about, where my identity is in my higher power, it is in my wife, my children, and my family, it really does free you up to be like wildly the best you in the work environment that you can be, because you know that that is not where you know, where you hang your hat at the end of the day. It's not. It's a means to your family.
When I was chasing money and titles and I was 20 something years old and trying to prove myself in the energy business, I got them. I mean, I was always getting promoted. It was always getting better. And when I went through the most heart-wrenching coaching 15, 16 years ago, where I had to redefine success, my coach, I cried sometimes for an hour and a half talking to him. I was so frustrated. I love this man. His name's Kevin Bear. When I came out of that 6 months, success to me was love and contribution. You know what happened when
Mm.
love and contribution were at the forefront of everything I did? I had a lot more money, a lot more authority, a lot more reach, a lot more employees, a lot more opportunities. But for I was just looking for love and contribution. It's like praying for wisdom and not for money. If you pray for wisdom, you might be so wise that you find this fulfillment. Maybe money is part of it. Money's kind of irrelevant, but perhaps you find fulfillment in work that is the greatest riches you could ever have.
Mm. You're so right. And is there any like formula for people, right, to get there? If you feel like you're listening to this and you're just down and out, you're kind of in the trenches of parenting and working, maybe both parents are working outside of the home. I mean, because I hear what you're saying. And for me, I've had a hard time putting my finger on what changed for Josh and I. You know, we're married 19 years, have 3 kids, and there was just something. Well, I guess if I think about it long enough, it's when we intentionally prioritized our marriage and literally, if you want to talk about the nuts and bolts of it, started, scheduling our dates on the calendar for an entire year, you know, going to a hotel once every 3 months to just reconnect, to have some good conversation, to go out to dinner uninterrupted, right? Like we just started doing some very practical, intentional things that made sure that we were attending to our marriage, prioritizing our faith, and then thinking about like which child needs something from us right now and how are we going to make sure that we attend to them. I guess that's where it happened for us, where we fell more in love. And then it's like, oh, yeah, these jobs that we have are awesome and we love them. But like our happiness is right here under our roof, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah, and those things are forever, right? The family part of it's forever. I love hearing that story. How many kids do you have?
3.
Three. Beautiful. Awesome. So, it's interesting. I always think about like somebody's in the trenches. They can't see the light of day because it's just they're bogged down in this. You're kind of opening to that. And something that jumps out at me, it goes back to language for a second. This you can start doing today. It's every time you tell somebody what's next, especially the words coming out of your mouth. Eventually, this becomes your internal dialogue too. But you tell them what you need to do or what you did last night or yesterday. And here's real examples. To get my son to sleep last night, I had to lay in the top bunk of a bunk bed that hurts a lot. It actually hurts my body to lay up there. And I had to wake up at 4 this morning because there was a couple things that I really needed to do before I did my reading, writing, and prayer to kick off the day. And I was pretty tired because I had to stay with my son for 7 days at the hospital 10 days ago or 7 days ago. I mean, it's just, I had to do all these things. And then I think about what's in front of me. I have to pack for a trip. I have to get ready to do whatever for work. I have to get ready for a podcast. Every time I say that sentence, I'm creating this burden, this task, this almost like a heaviness. But what if I told you that I got to lay in a bunk bed last night with a kid that I thought I was going to lose 4 years ago and watch him fall asleep, that I got to sit next to him in a hospital and be his dad so he never had to be alone, like all those poor kids whose parents wish they could be there, but they don't have the setup with their job where they're able to, and that I got the chance to make sure that this fancy mic was working, that I got to, not that I had to, that I get to pack for a trip, that I get to wake up at 4 this morning and watch the sunrise before I start waking up my kids. Like every one of these things is a blessing. I get to be with a sick kid. I get to face tough conversations at work. Everything that I can do, I get to pay the bills, right? If you have bills, then you must have a house and obligations, and that's pretty awesome. There's a lot of people that would give anything to have to pay your electric bill right now because they don't have electricity. So if you can start to change your language from I get to, or from I have to I get to, I think you can change a lot in that one practical step.
You're so right. And we have 100% control over that, right? Can't change other people's behavior, can't change their language, but we certainly can stop ourselves when we start that language. Oh, I had to. Oh, I have to. Yeah, but insert complaint. It's like, man, coming from a place of gratitude. I know on my best days, that's what's happening. That is what's happening is I'm seeing something as a challenge to overcome. Hey, this is going to be exciting. Never done this. I have an opportunity here, right? The day where I feel like giving in, throwing in the towel, quitting this job, whatever it is, it's if I go back and look at my language, you're 100% right. It's the I have to. It's this place of it's kind of a deficit mindset versus a place of abundance or gratefulness, really.
Yeah, it lifts up, and it's the exact same motions. I'm doing the exact same things, but I'm doing them with different intention, and that changes everything.
Totally. Wow. Good stuff, Jeff. This is just awesome. I want you to feel free to share with us anything else you might have had on your mind before we started this podcast, or certain tips or stories from your own family or whatever that could really bless our parents. This has just been wonderful.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things we talked about was that Amanda and I have been intentional since the very first date we ever went on. And what's neat is then in our marriage prep, we did a lot of like taking it very seriously when we were meeting and going through the workbooks together. Who are we? What does our bank account look like together? How do we make decisions? How do we work through arguments? How can we make sure that we don't let things stay with us when they should be expressed, that we don't have any undelivered communication? What's neat is that led to two things that I really like to share with people. One is, one of our dates every year, it's between our two birthdays in June, is our goal setting, goal reflecting date. So we take our goals, we sit there usually at a bar so we don't have to make reservations, so we can just sit at the bar of a fancy restaurant, and we go through, how did we do on all of our long-term goals? How do we do on our one-year goals? What is a goal that we used to have that doesn't make any sense because our life has shifted? Like, let's just be honest and just scratch that off of there. So it's a look back, and then it's a, what would the next year, 3 years, 10 years, and lifetime look like if we wanted to modify or add or remove any of the long-term goals? And it's just this really neat moment of like, whoa, we did a lot in the last 12 months. There are things that we wanted to do that feel completely different or that we can check off. And we've been doing this since the very beginning. And that's why when I tell people like something's put on our heart and then it's not a surprise to me when we're doing it a year later or 5 years later, it just is because we were intentional. What also is embedded in that is being intentional in communication. So there's times where everybody's running around, there's kids and juggling soccer and whatever, and you want to share something, but you don't know how to get the person's attention for the gravity of it or the seriousness of the feedback. And so we have just a tool that we can use, also again, a verbal tool, that if one of us really needs to talk about something that's more serious, but the other one doesn't look like they're ready or they don't realize it, it's the words, hey, when you get a minute, I really need to be vulnerable with you right now. And like, that's the setting the table, that if she says that to me, I'll stop what I'm doing if I can, and I'll say, you got it. And I'm not going to look at the phone. I'm not going to do any of this other stuff. Like, let's talk. Now she has me. I'm squared up to her. I'm looking at her. I'm with her. Or I say, okay, let me knock out this one last email. It's like sitting right in front of me. I'm about to finish it. And then I'll come, we can go for a walk or whatever it is. I need to be vulnerable right now. Is the table setting suggestion or words that allow me and Amanda to meet each other on a deeper level. It's like me going into an employee and saying, when you get a minute, I have some coaching I'd like to be able to give to you. Please let me know when a good time would be. Almost always they're able to separate themselves from the phone, the text, whatever, and then get into that moment because we've made that relationship clear. Or they can say, can you wait 1 hour? Absolutely. But if I don't set the table, guess what happens in your marriage? You walk in and say, hey, this really upset me when you whatever. And when I hear that and I'm not ready, I'm most likely defensive, maybe even attacking because I feel attacked. And now it's just getting worse because now we're fighting about fighting. Work, home, kids, set the table, have a real conversation. And then the last thing.
Love it.
Yeah, well, I'll share one more thing with you because you and I had a good call a month ago. I told you I don't have teenage kids yet, and I'll have a bunch of them at some point. And then we'll go on through the next phase. But I want people to know that I have been redeemed in my life after being a wild, crazy, kind of reckless late teen. When I was 18, 19, 20, really at 19, I kind of hit this pinnacle of, I wasn't suicidal, I wasn't depressed, but I just kind of gave up on the things that matter and started partying and feeling invincible and kind of let it all go. And in that process, I found that I was not only having too much to drink, I was drinking and driving. And by the grace of God, got arrested when I was 19 in College Station, Texas, as a sophomore at Texas A&M. And it was the greatest moment because I wasn't in an accident. I didn't hurt anybody. So I was able to kind of have this like death to self moment and rebirth that night. And as I sobered up and told my parents, everybody was mad at me. So I pled guilty as soon as I could. I lost my license for over a year, and I was inspired at a MAD victim impact panel. This mom was speaking about the death of her daughter who was killed on the side of the road by a drunk driver. And something hit me, like, what's the difference between me and that guy that killed her? And I couldn't come up with it. And I saw a 20-year vision that I've got to do something about this. And I was already very charismatic, very connected, very like alive at Texas A&M as a young student. And so I kind of dedicated the rest of my college days to launching a program known as Carpool, Caring Aggies Are Protecting of Our Lives, that used all the logic of what would crazy Jeff, 19 years old, use, and what would my wife, 5'4" shy Amanda, use. And it was a program that wasn't based on a bus or anything else. This is pre-Uber. It's 24 years old. It was a guy and a girl in rented cars that take you home, that are trained in everything, that don't take you to other bars, clubs, or parties, that's non-judgmental, completely student-run, free, and rewarding to everybody involved. Every single stakeholder in that entire wheel is rewarded by the existence of this organization. And within a few months, it became known as the nation's largest program to reduce drunk driving in a college town. And then I franchised it all over the U.S. I say this because imagine my parents. I'm the youngest of 4 kids. We've all gone through A&M, and now their baby is getting out of jail one night, and they have got to feel deflated and disgusted. And I always go back to this, like, honor your mother and father, and understanding like how much I felt like a disgrace. And so part of my, like, good kid, raised as a good kid, making a stupid mistake, how can I be redeemed in this? And it was to go and make an impact on the rest of the world. And my parents were part of the team that helped to make that happen, because they forgave me of all my debts. That program's given 295,000 free rides home in 24 years in just one of the college campuses that it's at. So I'm sharing that for hope for those of you who are frustrated with your kids.
Man, Jeff, I appreciate you sharing that story of your own redemption and struggle, because it's true. No matter, how intentional we are as parents, we know that our kids have free will. And once they are outside of our, mentoring and coaching and out of the home, they're on their own. There's so many things that we can do to build them up and to give them great advice, but ultimately they're going to make choices. And I made some of those same choices myself as a college student, and just to have that hope that, if we keep those bonds tight with our kids and they take a left down the bad alley, that we can welcome them home like your parents did. We might be disappointed, but to say, listen, you have another chance. And what could you do? What good could come out of something so, devastating to you? Had a lot of natural consequences for you as a young man, right? To have a DUI, to sit in jail for a night, to be in the presence of mothers talking about their real children who had been killed by someone who did the same thing you did. Like, that's heavy, but to be able to turn that around and go, you know what, how can we prevent this in the future? It's such a beautiful story.
Well, and it's interesting because what I did was a big grand gesture, but you can also turn around and say, all right, I'm done with this lifestyle. What are things I can do to occupy my time? And part of my journey was learning to play guitar, which I'm not even good to this day, but I enjoyed learning. I started reading for fun. I started doing things that were more productive hangouts with my friends. And so it's also that whole part of like, who can I become as a result of this? And going back to where you started with this whole thing about Steve and his wife, his kids didn't recognize him 6 months later. And truly, it's not like it takes 6 years to reinvent yourself, to start getting a 4.0 in life of being a virtuous person, a virtuous parent, a virtuous leader, even before you have kids. I'm sure there's people that have listened to your stuff before that are young adults praying to have a family someday. Live in that virtue now so that you're the person who can be there for whoever you're supposed to meet.
Absolutely. Focusing on the vital few, getting rid of the trivial many, and keeping it simple in family life, prioritizing what matters, higher power, spouse, children, above everything else. And that's the game changer.
That's right. I love all that. I'll tell you that I've I had a child born, and then when he was 18 hours old, they told me to go get my wife. She had had a C-section, and his lungs never opened when he was born. And the quick version of this, nobody needs to get too sad because he's on earth with us right now. I went to go see my wife, and a doctor showed up and said, "Get a wheelchair. It's time to say goodbye to your son." He was 18 hours old. I walked with my wife very quickly through many, many hallways of this hospital to go say goodbye to our son. Having faced that moment, the hardest moment of my entire life, period, makes me not take for granted any single breath of my children. Your children and my children are going to mess up. I messed up. They're going to make us mad. They're going to disrespect us. They're going to blatantly disrespect us, and sometimes unintentionally. And all of that is just part of this process of refining over time. It's that we are called to be a light to them, and we are called to be both guardian and catalyst for their change, right? The ones who let them free so that they can go and live in this world and do what they're called to do. So all that to say, just have hope. You're not supposed to be a perfect parent. They're not supposed to be a perfect kid.
Absolutely. I echo that sentiment 100%. And I'm so glad that your son is still with your family. They're lucky to have parents so intentional and so just dedicated to them to be the leaders that they need you to be. So it's just been a pleasure having you on. Jeff, how would someone get in touch with you if they wanted to follow you and kind of check out more about, your consulting and your coaching practice? Where do they go?
Thanks
Where
for
you're hanging
asking.
out?
Yeah, a couple quick things. One is we have a huge ecosystem. We're building out this platform where business is a blessing, called Undivided Life. Very easy to find online. It's just undivided.life is the website, not .com, undivided.life. If anybody's on LinkedIn, I post content daily. I cover a lot of this stuff often. Jeff Schiefelbein is pretty easy to find. It can be in the show notes too. And last but not least, we're going to build out the rest of jeffschiefelbein.com. Right now, I think it just goes to my company website, but I'm giving a lot of talks all over. And now that we've beefed up and we started hiring people in this new company that we launched back in January of 2023, jeffschiefelbein.com will also become a platform where people can go to engage a little bit of the content and a lot of, if there's a chance for me to come and speak to a group or be part of a conference. So happy to do all of these things and just keep blessing the world without taking away from the priorities of faith, wife, kids, and all else.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. We are big fans. Would love to have you back on the show sometime. There's so much content we could cover. You have really blessed our parent community, and wish your wife the best in her next delivery of number 7. And congratulations early on that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Guys, be sure that you check out what Jeff's got going on. Okay. He's got a podcast. Like if you just Google his name, you will understand. Like this man is blessing a lot of people, and you can be part of that community. So check him out. All the links are in the show notes, the description of the show. If you scroll down, you will find them. And make sure that you are engaging with us, right? Our community at Families of Character. We're here to bring you great guests, people who align with us in our vision about parents coming together, saving their marriage and elevating their marriage and being a great model to their children so that their children are excited about marriage and family life one day too. And we're in this together. We want practical solutions. We want, the next step, 1% better today, and it's possible. So hang with us. Again, we appreciate any support that you give us. Feedback is one of those ways that you support us is by emailing back when you get our Tuesday email newsletter, letting us know if you have guests for the show, and then also just through your donations. It really helps to support us continuing our mission. So with that, I'm going to close, and we'll catch you on another episode of the Families of Character Show. Thanks so much.